there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shelby and today I'm going to be talking about my most read authors of 2021. I tried to narrow it down to 10 authors, but a lot of them were tied, so I ended up having 11 authors to talk about today. I'm sure if you've been following me a long time, you know some of my favorite authors and these won't be a surprise. But when I looked through all the books that I read this year and kind of tallied up how many I had read by each author, I had some authors that I was kind of surprised that I had read so many by them, and some that didn't make the list that were really close runner-ups. I'll link all the authors that I talk about down below, and let's get right into it. So my most read author of 2021 is Kennedy Fox. I discovered Kennedy Fox, which is actually two authors that write together. I discovered them in 2021, and I've been catching up on their very extensive backlist. I started out with one of their duets. They have a lot of duets, and the duets are all part of duet series, so each series has like maybe 4 duets or something like that. And I started out with Baby Mine and Baby Yours, and I really enjoyed it. They were very dramatic, and afterwards I went into reading their cowboy romances. So I read their Bishop Brothers series. I've been reading their Next Generation series called the Circle B Ranch series, and that series is like 8 books, so that's where a lot of the books come from. If you like cowboy romances, I think you'd really like Kennedy Fox's Cowboy series. Coming in at number 2 with 14 books is Vi Keeland, and I love Vi Keeland. You guys know that. She is one of my favorite authors, and I started catching up on her backlist titles at the end of last year, and so I read a ton of them at the beginning of 2021, and all of her new releases that have come out this year independently, as well as co-written with Penelope Ward. So I did catch up on a lot of older titles of hers, also some novellas that were free at the end of other novels, so some of those are in here as well. She writes a really good like office and forbidden romances. A lot of times they are set in like New York City or Chicago, big cities rather than small towns. I think my favorite that I read by her this year was definitely Sex Not Love, and this one was written a couple of years ago, but man, it really blew me away. I also read The Rivals back in like January, and I love that one as well. It's an enemies to lovers romance. And then coming in at number 3 is Megan Quinn, and I read a total of 13 of her books. I read all of her new releases this year and caught up on a couple of series from past years. Some of my favorites of hers this year were Kiss and Don't Tell. That is her newest hockey romance. I also liked her newest standalone called A Not So Meet Cute, and it just came out in November. And then earlier in the year, I really loved The Perfect Catch, and that is part of her Brentwood baseball series. If you like rom-coms, I think you'd probably love Megan Quinn. And then the next author I read the most of is Penelope Ward. I read 11 of her books, and I just started reading her backlist this year. I didn't start doing it until this year. Aside from the books that she co-wrote with Vi Keeland, I started reading their books a few years ago. And my favorite of hers by far this year was The Aristocrat, and that one came out I believe in August, and it was so good, had a lot of angst to it, and it also was a little bit forbidden. My second favorite of hers would be When August Ends. That one was a really great forbidden age gap summer romance. And then the next 3 authors actually are tied, all with 9 books read, and one of them is Serena Bowen. I caught up on her True North series this book, as well as a spin-off book from the series and a start of a spin-off series that she wrote a book in. So I read a lot of her books this year. 9 is quite a bit. I love her True North series. I think my favorite is the spin-off book called Roommate, and that is a male small town co-workers forbidden romance. I also read a couple of her hockey romances, which I wasn't a huge fan of. They were part of, I think it's called the Brooklyn Bruisers series. Those are traditionally published. I do think that her independently published stuff is better, but I did read a couple of those. I would highly recommend the True North series, and I read the first book in the Moo You series, which is a spin-off series, and that one was really great as well. Then I ended up reading 9 books by Devaney Perry, and 3 of those books were written by Willa Nash, which is also Devaney Perry if you didn't know. Those were 3 holiday novellas, and I really liked those. I loved Tragic by Devaney Perry. That's the 3rd book in her Lark Cove series. It's very emotional, and I really liked the first book in her new series called Indigo Ridge. And then another is Claire Kingsley. I was trying to catch up on some of her older titles, and I caught up on a new release of hers as well, so I was kind of surprised that I read a total of 9 books of hers, because I didn't feel like I read that many. But I love her Dirty Martini Running Club series, and I caught up on its newest release, and I believe that one was called Marrying Mr. Wrong, but correct me, I could be inaccurate on that. And the reason I couldn't do 10 authors is because the final 4 authors are all tied at 7 books, And the first one is Candy Steiner, which I'm not surprised with that at all because I've caught up with all of her new releases. I read a bunch of her Palm South University books that I hadn't read yet in order to read the newest one that came out, I believe, in like September. And I reread one of her older titles called Revelry with a friend of mine, and I had read that already in like 2018. And I wanted to see if I would still love it. I loved her new release that came out over the summer called Say Yes, and this was a nostalgic 90s romance, and the heroine has a disability and she is an artist, and I loved that angsty romance. And if you've read Candy Steiner, you know she writes angst really, really well. Another is Melanie Harlow, and I love her books. I've read so many of her books, and I've been trying to catch up on her older titles this year. So I did catch up on her Happy Crazy Love series, and that had 3 books in it. I also read her new releases like Tie Me Down as well as Ignite, and I loved those as well. And I read one of her little novellas called The Tango Lesson, and that one was short and spicy. An unexpected person on this list is Corinne Michaels. For me, she's unexpected because she's not a favorite author. I do like her books, but a lot of them are like 3.5 stars. I caught up on her Arrowwood Brothers series, and then I read her latest series, and I think that has like 2 books in it. And I read a couple of her standalones, and one of them I really liked. I can't remember the title, but I will put the picture on the screen. And this was so good. It was set in a hospital, and it was just really unexpected for me, and I loved it. Definitely my favorite one I've read by her thus far. And then another is Max Monroe, and they publish a lot of books. I really like their new series called The Winslow Brothers. I liked the first book, which is called The Bet, and I really liked the second book, which is called The Pact. They're kind of spicy compared to Max Monroe's other books, and they were really enjoyable. I also read a couple of their backlist titles to kind of catch up on things, and I definitely like their new releases most, but their backlist stuff is pretty good too. So those are my most read authors of 2021. As you can tell by when I'm publishing this video, it is not the end of the year yet. It's the beginning of December, so I still have time to read more by these authors and possibly read more by other authors that could be my most read. But I'm just gonna like kind of cut it off here and say those are my most read authors of this year. I know that Candy Steiner also has one coming out in a couple of days, so I'm definitely going to be reading that. But yeah, I'd love to hear what your guys' most read authors of this year were. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys on my next one. Bye.